Hey, so today we will talk about the vibe coding, and I will not convince you that vibe coding is bad or good. And the CEO of NVIDIA say that programming is dead, and the new programming language is the natural language. But I will be careful of listening the guy that bet everything on the AI and making the money on selling the shuffles. So let's to be honest, the programming languages are not that. But the ultimate question, could the natural language and LLM actually be the new compiler and make the next spin and make a dream from 60s or 70s of the fourth or fifth generation programming languages that was crushed and we still not there. Yeah, from 60s. It's actually not the mistake. So the first language was the similar that the predecessor of Smalltalk that had this goal, and actually COBOL programming language was also the goal to make something that analyst with the plain English read in the document and make it executable. So it's a 60s ideas, but could be the natural language the next programming language actually. And the answer is it depends, because it's not new, it's from 60s, and even if you will take the SQL as a domain language, it's quite close to English, right? And it's a quite old one, and it's not the new idea. And we need to understand that from one point in a spectrum, we have the natural language. And natural language, if you take the English, have the grammar, some historical processes, and all other things. But the problem with the natural language that is too ambiguous. So sometimes you could misinterpret the sentence quite easily, and sometimes you need to have the high context to understand what actually the sentence mean. From other side of spectrum, we have the programming languages, and the wide variety of the programming languages. So the most primitive one was the focused on the machines, right? So it was the assembly language that you practically program with the commands that was understood by the CPU, and every decade bring the more and more abstractions to the programming languages to make them understandable and cognitively easier for the people instead of the machines. So after the machine instructions, we invent the memorization and make it easy to remember these instructions, and then we invent the assembly language. In some point, we make this more procedural oriented, all goal or formula translation languages that allows people to manipulate with the variables and something that creates some cognitive model of the computing, right? And we could continue to the end of the object-oriented languages, and we still believe that human brain see the objects in the real world. That's why the object-oriented programming actually should be quite close to the human language. So the programming languages also make the evolution. But the ultimate goal actually was to make the language natural. From one side, you have the formal systems that describe something rigorously. From other side, you have something big. And how we could make this works together. And one step that humans take from the programming languages to make it closer to the business, for example, was the domain-specific languages and the language-oriented programming. And the domain-specific languages mean that You build some language that reflect the domain, different objects and operations of objects that you could share abstractly and declarative with the people that work in this domain. And DSLs have the huge history, and we have different kind of DSLs, right? So the most primitive DSL is the embedded DSL, when the basic of the building the domain specific language actually is the hosting programming language. And here we faced the problem that people still need to know Ruby to write something in a DSL that's written in Ruby. And then some languages came to the rescue that practically have no syntax and practically have really limited amount of the cognitive concepts. And to these languages, we could connect actually the Smalltalk, Lisp, and probably the fourth. But Smalltalk and Lisp was most flexible, so you practically don't need to know Lisp, but it looks still ugly. So the DSL, then the next level is the embedded DSL. Next level is the embedded DSL with the language that have the meta programming capabilities and the ability to have the minimal syntax that influence the domain specific language. The next step that not always you could express something in such languages, and then instead of bottom up or top down design, you could take this middle ground or this language oriented processing when you really design the language. And with the completely arbitrary syntax that makes sense for your domain. And the Rocket programming language actually is the good example of the language-oriented programming that allows you to create the language that could naturally express something rather close to English or closer to the domain. And we have a lot of applications of this language-oriented design. And right now, the language-oriented design and pathos are the best that allows us to make this formal system and programming languages closer to the human language. So it's the bleeding edge of the cognitive model and programming languages that we currently have. It's the language-oriented design, but still you have this language people that actually designing the language and supporting the agent, the engine that will execute the language. From the natural language side, it's still quite far because it's not the natural language, it's still quite English-like language that close to the domain. And the next step that could make the natural language closer to the language-oriented programming and domain driven languages, actually it's what we called a constrained natural language. And constrained natural language extremely popular in finances and banking and all other systems that focus on the business rules. So we take the English and form the fixed dictionary of the words and their combinations. So we have the fixed dictionary of the words together with the fixed grammar. And we make it disambiguous. So you have the fixed dictionary together with the fixed grammar that still allows you to express more in a human way, but you already have some kind of formal system on top. And it's this in-between state that you have the natural language, but it's constrained natural language. That throw away the disambiguity. But if you will think about it, you will understand that you just reinventing the programming languages. And if we could describe this landscape, it's a natural language, then constrained natural language, then it's a language-oriented design and domain-specific languages that get compiled to something that machines will understand. And the key question here coding engines help us to take the constrained natural language and translate it to domain specific languages. And I really believe that it's actually the good combination or good hybrid that we could have the for some particular domains specific language oriented domain specific languages that will be understood already with the coding agents, but also we could have quite constrained human language that could be understandable by product managers and business and domain specialists, and the work of the LLMs and coding agents will be the translation not from the natural language to Python that full of the hallucination, but from constrained natural languages to domain specific languages. And we will still have the layer of the humans that actually will tackle and tweak the translation agents and compilers for this flow. And maybe it's a good enough compromise that make vibe coding and business-oriented development happens and make the dream of common business COBOL actually real in 2026. So it's my take on this. So we will move more and more to the language oriented design, and it's unavoidable. But it's a one path that keep the human in a loop and human cognitive model as a constraint for all this loop. Yet another evolutionary approach when we just use the prompting to communicate with the artificial intelligence that will build its own language that artificial intelligence models and agents will understand. But it's too futuristic, to be honest. So let's think about it next time. For now, it's all that I was keen to share with you, and see you next time. Choose.